After class, Shido goes to Kurumi and welcomes her out on the town with him, which she cheerfully acknowledges. As she leaves, Shido recollects what he, Kotori, and Rain discussed concerning Kurumi. Prior, both Kotori and Rain report to Shido that the other day, the AST had tracked down a soul and killed her, with the killed soul being Kurumi, yet Shido tells the two that Kurumi had recently shown up to class before, with the three then, at that point, starting to consider how she endured being killed. As he contemplates over this and lets himself know that he can't let Kurumi go, Origami then, at that point, faces him about what he implied by this, having heard what he recently said. Requesting a clarification, be that as it may, Shido pardons himself from her and leaves. Origami then, at that point, recollects her past showdown with Kurumi. Prior during this, Origami is as yet limited by Kurumi, who then considers beating up her. Notwithstanding, Kurumi then chooses saving her for later whenever she is finished with Shido first. She then lets her go and disappears, letting Origami be. In the present, Origami says Shido's name in stress. After school, Shido and Toka are returning home in the wake of getting a few basic food items. Shido apologizes to her for not appearing at lunch prior and afterward inquires as to whether she essentially got an opportunity to eat. Toka unfortunately answers that she did. In a flashback prior at lunch, Toka has not really contacted her bento despite the fact that she is as of now eager. While trusting that Shido will return, Toka ponders where Shido is and begins to cry. Computer-based intelligence, Mai, and me then enter the homeroom holding 2 tickets. The threesome then notice Toka and ask her for what good reason she hasn't had her lunch at this point, yet think that she is profoundly vexed and ask her what's up. Toka answers that she is as yet sitting tight for Shido and makes reference to how she and him have not exactly talked a lot of today, saying that the idea caused her to feel miserable out of nowhere. Toka then, at that point, cries, yet computer-based intelligence, Mai, and me solace her, with the 3 faulting Shido for being the explanation she is vexed. As Toka attempts to make sense of that Shido did nothing off base, man-made intelligence then tells her that they know and tells her not to be miserable since they can help her. In the present, Shido and Toka show up back at the Itsuka family, and as Shido strolls to the kitchen to get ready supper, Toka bafflingly locks the entryway behind her and shuts the drapes also. In the lounge room and kitchen, Shido inquires as to whether she needs to return home first, however gets no reaction. Shido goes to her and asks her once more, yet gets no answer. All things considered, Toka unfastens her uniform and creeps on the ground with the tickets in her mouth. Shido, totally confounded at the circumstance, falls back to the mentor and asks Toka what she is doing. Not finding a solution, Shido indeed asks what is happening. Toka then, at that point, sits up and peruses a little note she has on what her following stage is. Out of nowhere, Toka puts the tickets she in the middle of between her cleavage and afterward inquires as to whether he could go out on the town with her tomorrow. Then Shido, actually befuddled, acknowledges and takes the tickets, which Toka responds to joyfully. Toka then trains Shido to meet her by the Tengu station at 10 AM and cheerfully leaves. Shido then sees the note Toka had and sharply responds after perusing the guidelines on it. He then gets a call from Origami and is asked out on the town with her at Tengu station at 11 AM. Before Shido can converse with her more, Origami hangs up, compelling him on a triple date with Kurumi, Toka, and Origami. The following day at Tengu Station, Shido hangs tight for Toka similarly as Kotori scolds him for being triple set up for a significant day. Shido then says that she was the person who told him not to offset on both Toka and Origami. Kotori advises him that on the off chance that he doesn't stay faithful to his obligations to Toka, her bliss meter will quickly drop. She additionally cautions him that dropping on Origami will mean the AST wizard developing more dubious. In any case, she consoles Shido that Fraxinus will be behind him and aiding him out as far as possible. After much pausing, Toka shows up, wearing an exceptionally charming outfit chose for her by Rain. Shido then praises Toka on her outfit and she, however humiliated, requests that they go now and Shido follows, inquiring as to whether she knows where she is going. Similarly, as they leave, the team spots Origami, who has shown up an hour ahead of schedule than anticipated. Toka then asks Shido what an aquarium is, so Shido makes sense of for her that it is where various sorts of fish from the ocean should be visible. In any case, Toka promptly considers it fish for food and Shido says something else. As the two arrive at the aquarium, Kurumi shows up at the station 10 minutes ahead of schedule than anticipated, something that Kotori marginally comments on. Inside the aquarium, Toka is immediately surprised by the ocean animals she sees and requests that Shido show up with her to see a greater amount of them ahead. Kotori then contacts Shido to meet Kurumi now and that Euphraxinus will get him to see her. Shido then fakes having a stomach hurt and reasons himself from Toka. Outside, Shido tracks down a confined region and is magically transported by Fraxinus close to the station, where Shido rushes to meet Kurumi. He shows up and apologizes to her for being late. Kurumi then, at that point, asks where they ought to go first, inciting a choice for the Fraxinus group to look over 3 choices: circumvent the shopping center, watch a heartfelt film, or go to an undergarments shop. The group picks and the 2 choices 1 and 2 get similar measure of votes. Kotori comments on how both are not exactly awful decisions, but rather Kanazuki states how the 2 decisions are associated with the station and the aquarium, referring to the possibilities of Shido running into either Toka or Origami are low. Accordingly, the undergarments shop might be the most ideal choice. Kotori is distrustful, however Rain specifies that the other day, Shido had inadvertently requested that Kurumi show her undies to him, and she did as such easily. Kotori grins and settles on the decision to Shido, who responds to the decision with shock and expresses it without holding back unintentionally. Kurumi then, at that point, lets him know that assuming that is what he needs, she wouldn't see any problems with going to one. The 2 head out and find one close to the station. Kurumi is in awe of the many brands she sees and goes to pick a couple. She then, at that point, asks Shido which one would suit her, beginning one more decision for Fraxinus to browse. After the decision is made, Kotori educates Shido to go with the 3rd choice and Shido reluctantly does as such. He then, at that point, directs Kurumi toward the other undergarments piece, which is an undeniably more uncovering one than the 2 she picked. Kurumi inquires as to whether he figures she will be more appealing in that one than the 2 she picked, and Shido stammers that he simply figured she would look perfect in it, and Kurumi effectively agrees, gets it, and goes to give it a shot in the evolving room. After a second, the changing room opens and uncovers Kurumi wearing the unmentionables, and she asks Shido his thought process. However, before he can reply, simulated intelligence, Mai, and me show up and asks Shido for what valid reason he is with Kurumi. Kotori then, at that point, contacts Shido and lets him know that he wants to leave rapidly to meet Origami, yet to not leave Kurumi without commending her. Shido then fakes another stomach hurt, praises Kurumi, and gets a move on as the triplet pursue him. In the meantime, at the Tengu army installation, Mana is being gone to by a gathering of researchers as they work on her wiring suit. Back with Shido, he can lose the triplet and get together with Origami at the station, however he actually apologizes for being truly late. Shido then, at that point, asks her where they will go, and Origami lets him know that they will go see a film. The 2 stop at a cafe to have lunch first. Shido asks Origami for what reason she requested him out on the town all from an unexpected, and she answers that she simply didn't maintain that he should be without help from anyone else and asks him that after the film that he drop by her place, and Shido inquires as to why. Origami answers that he ought to remain at her place until further notice. Back at Fraxinus, Kotori is alarmed by her group of Toka who has now passed on the aquarium to search for Shido. At the cafe once more, as Shido and Origami eat, he sees Toka outside going around searching for him, making him almost stifle on his food and excuse himself from Origami. Toka is then called out by Shido, and she is in alleviation to find him and her stomach snarls. It is currently ravenous to imply that she. Shido then welcomes Toka to eat with him, and she cheerfully acknowledges. As they eat at the sushi cafe, Kurumi trusts that Shido will return. Back with Shido and Toka, he fakes one more stomachache and reasons himself from her and is promptly moved to Kurumi. Shido is then shocked to gain from Kurumi that she purchased the underwear she gave a shot with her colloquialism that she got it due to his commendation on her for wearing it. The triple date proceeds. Shido additionally attempts to dodge being seen by man-made intelligence, Mai, and Me. Fortunately, he is supported by Yoshino in each corner. However, Yoshino at last gets worn out and is magically transported back to Fraxinus where Rain gets her. Later on, Shido once more reasons himself from Kurumi for a restroom break, with Kurumi noticing how Shido's consistent runoffs are somewhat of a killjoy on their date. Sitting on a close-by seat, Kurumi shares with herself how soon Shido will at last be all hers. While getting a beverage, Kurumi hears a cat close by. In the forest, a lot of reprobates are threatening a little cat with pellet firearms. Kurumi hinders and inquires as to whether she could go along with them. Her solicitation is invited, and Kurumi then forebodingly recommends that they presently change their objectives. In Fraxinus, the aircraft's video feed on her out of nowhere goes out. In the interim, while searching for Shido, Toka catches Origami where the two promptly squabble at one another once more, and the two then declare that they are searching for Shido, confounding the two of them at what the other recently said. Both then begin to blame each other for lying about being out on the town with Shido, as both likewise guarantee to be out on the town with him until Origami understands that Shido could be without help from anyone else at the present time and runs off to search for him, with Toka following her. At the recreation area, Shido gets back to where Kurumi was sitting and is then reached by Kotori, who lets him know that they neglected to focus on Kurumi. Nonetheless, she is immediately told by the Fraxinus team that Kurumi is still close by, so Shido goes to view as her. In the forest of the recreation area, Shido strolls around searching for her, however to his and Kotori's shock find the close-by region splattered in new paths of blood. Unfit to bear the sight, Shido starts to overreact as Kotori attempts to advise him to quiet down. As Shido stoops down in dread, a recognizable voice shouts to him. He turns upward and finds Kurumi, who is wearing an alternate clothing, and her left eye is uncovered to have a gold clock design, pointing a weapon at one of the reprobates who is asking for leniency. Kurumi then criticizes the enduring delinquent for attempting to hard-heartedly kill a defenseless animal before at last killing him. As Shido keeps on searching with sickening dread, Kotori wakes him up and advises him to leave. Kurumi then brings a lot of shadowy hands and gets Shido by his legs, keeping him from getting away. Shido advises Kurumi to let him go, yet the last option can energetically whine how she maintained that their date should endure longer as she strolls nearer to Shido. Kurumi then, at that point, holds Shido and gets ready to kill him too, however she is then tossed around the region to a close-by tree. Fortunately, he is saved at that point by Mana, who shows up and inquires as to whether Shido is okay. Seeing her weaponized outfit, Shido is puzzled by her appearance.